5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're live. Hey,
Yay!
Blair.
That's awesome. I love being live. It's better than
I know. We're live from MusicRow411, which just seemed to work. And we're so excited to have you tonight.
Oh, well, I am excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. We want to welcome everybody that is joining us tonight and on the replay. We are so happy to have you with us. MusicRow411 and Brooklyn Basement Records and Artist Services are all about helping the indie artists and songwriter get better and learn. And we're going to find out tonight just what that universe looks like. A little bit about Blair. She will tell you about her label, but she is leading the charge as a badass female founder.
Thank you.
As the co-founder of Brooklyn Basement Records, and then their Artist Services company, which I don't think has a different name, does it?
As of right now, no. We call them artist partnerships.
Yeah. and we're going to talk about
yes,
advice by the slice too, which is super cool.
Yes.
So tonight, as you guys know, we're going to be talking about inside indie labels. So there are many of you out there who are creators and looking at that. And as you may or may not know, an article just came out that said the indie market, the indie artist market, which includes songwriters, musicians, duos, bands, everything, is the fastest growing segment of the music industry today, globally. So you have come to the right place. And before we get too carried away, I want to dive right in and welcome Blair and ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and where the idea for BBR was born and how that all came to be.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Blair Clark, and I am the head of Brooklyn Basement Records. I started it with Ron Pope, who is an independent artist that I've been managing since about 2012. And he's been independent ever since I started working with him. And so I've been on tour with him. I've tour managed, I've run merch, I have done accounting. I've literally done every part. I've done, graphic design, marketing, advertising, literally every part of the music industry I have touched in some way. Some I like more than others. But then in 2015, we came across a couple of artists that we really were passionate about their talent. And we just thought that if we could help them, from the ground up, and it was an all hands on deck thing. We were shaping their brand. Ron was helping writing the songs and producing. And it was very much a holistic view of artist development. And so that's how Brooklyn Basement Records was born. At the time, we lived in Brooklyn. And so we were, quite creative, and it started in our basement. So we named it
so cool.
Basement. And then a few years later, when we moved down to Nashville, we were more back and forth. So it felt natural to keep the name. And honestly, we started evolving what the label was and what it meant in 2018 when we met an artist named Emily Scott Robinson. We met her at Americana Fest.
She's blowing up, as a matter of fact.
She's amazing. She is just amazing. I have so much respect and love for her, but we saw her at a showcase and went up to her afterwards because we were just blown away by her performance and her songwriting. And she wasn't working with anybody. She did have a few team members in place, so she wasn't really in a position to be signed. And so that brought a new opportunity to us to expand what we did. And so I had always kind of played with the idea of working with independent artists on the side because that's what I'd always been doing with Ron. And I really love it because it feels so much like a partnership. There's such a good balance of the artist knowing what they want and you kind of being able to facilitate and expand the creative vision. So with Emily, we, kind of talked to her and just said, where do you need help? What can we do? And that's how we came on board. And that's how the artist partnerships side of Brooklyn Basement Records was born. And so now it's really just tailor-made for independent artists that really don't want to be signed or aren't in a position to be. So it's been really fun.
Is that that's so cool. And being a former indie artist myself, I know about touching all the things, and I wish you had been around. You might not have liked my music, but I mean, I wish more indie labels had been available, and Americana for that matter.
Yes.
But do you think this is, it seems to me that you're on the cutting edge of something, because I think as the world expands globally, there are more and more artists that want to have involvement in their own careers, creative control, but they don't want to do all the touchy things that, you know, they're willing to pay somebody because it's going to make them have more income down the road with their gigs, with their live streams. So do you feel like you are a wizard and you
No, I don't feel like I'm a wizard. I just feel like I was trying to fill a need, you know, and there was a gap, and there still is a big gap with, you know, between labels and being completely independent. You know, there's not a great space. And so that's the space that I'm trying to fill is that. And we do still have the label. We have a couple of artists that are still signed to the label, and we work with them. But yeah, I just personally, because of my work with Ron and being independent for so long, I knew how much we fought for every dollar that we made. And, you know, we were willing to spend it in places that added value. But really, you know, we wanted to make the money that he made on streaming and everything. So one of the reasons I wanted to start this sort of partnership deal with artists is I don't want to touch back end royalties. I don't want to own masters. I didn't have any hand in making the art. So I feel like I shouldn't be touching that money. And so it is a different sort of, you know, way of working things that I think that a lot of traditional labels and label services have a hard time wrapping their head around, because yeah, if something blows up, you don't get a piece of that. But I think what we're building is bigger than that, you know, and I feel like there's just not, I just can't, I'm not managing these people, you know, I'm coming on for, you know, 4 to 6 months. I shouldn't make money off of them for 10 years. And that's, you know, a fairly standard deal. And so, I don't want to say that there's not a place for labels, because there certainly is. There's absolutely a place for, you know, labels that are small. There's a place for labels that are big. It just depends on what the artist wants and what the artist needs. And I mean, I think right now you're saying like the cutting edge. I think the people that are really on the cutting edge are artists, and this is going to sound crazy because everybody can probably see this, but artists like Taylor Swift and Beyonce, they have total control over what they are doing right now. And they have a vision, they're able to execute it. Neither one of them have real quote unquote managers. They're managing themselves. They have a team of people that they've built around themselves.
But that are their vision, right?
They are making the decision at the end of the day. And so I think I think it's the way forward for artists that want to have a sustainable career. And you don't have to be that big, you know, you can just, you know, find a place for yourself and make it work.
Well, I think it's brilliant. And one of the things, since we help, you know, MusicRow411 is about helping people do things the right way from the beginning to save them time and frustration. And once you do the right things and get going, you can build momentum. Yes. In fact, we have a term called Musicpreneur. And in today's very competitive world, with all the marketing of popular culture out there, you are a brand, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
absolutely. And you have to think like a brand, and you have to be an entrepreneur, because at the end of the day, as our dear friend Jeremy Brook always says, hi, Jeremy, if you're out there, you're a business.
Yes.
Even if you're a singer-songwriter or a solo artist, you are a business. So you have to run yourself like that. And that's where you come in, right? To fill in those pieces. You could almost be like a rent-a-CEO.
Kind of, yes. So I think that my role in these sorts of partnerships is the big picture, the strategic vision. You know, I want to take what they've created and what they are creating with their visuals and their, you know, just the brand of who they are, and make sure that it works and we release stuff at the right time. And so, yeah, it's definitely a partnership. I would never say that anybody that we've ever worked with has come to us and been like, here you go, and then we've just done all the stuff. Because I think that that is something that some artists think that labels do or managers do, or, you know, label services group, which is fairly antiquated. And now you really do have to have a very heavy hand in everything you do if you want to be a success.
So, yeah. So let's go back to the indie label model.
Yes.
Because we have a lot of independent and DIY artists in our community, and I know they're dying to know, what would you say, Blair, is the biggest differentiator between an indie label and signing to a bigger label? What does that look like for the artist or the songwriter?
Well, it does depend on the genre. Major labels have reach. They can absolutely, if they are willing to put the effort in and put the dollars behind it, your scale can go far and wide. Unfortunately, with major labels, a lot of times you can get shelved, or, you know, it's just not the right time. You know, there's a lot of different factors that play into it. Or, you know, they could put out one song for you, decide it didn't work, and then scrap the rest of it. And then you're stuck in this deal. So that's unfortunate. And major label deals tend to not be as artist friendly. Indie deals, on the other hand, are much more artist friendly. A lot of them, especially these days, are after you recoup your advance, which is much smaller than major labels, then you split 50-50, which is it's a very artist friendly way of looking at things. Sorry if you hear this.
No, you're Brooklyn Basement Records. You have the built-in sounds, right? The sirens. It's very clever of you to have that as part of your sound design of Brooklyn.
Yeah, it's just the brand. But I think what indie labels are really good at are genres that, you know, aren't like big pop genres, you know, Americana or, you know, indie rock, you know, and they can do some super creative things because they're not trying to follow the formula. And they're very flexible. And so if something changes, then they can be nimble and move. And that's what drew me to the independent side, and why I never wanted to work for a bigger corporation or start working with a bigger management group, which was presented to me in the earlier days of my managing career, was because I just felt like if quick decisions needed to be made, I wanted to make them, you know, and not have to go through a bunch of people. And so there are significant differences. I don't know if that's come across, but there are significant differences between indie labels and majors. Both can help, both could potentially not work for you. It's hard because it depends on the artist and it depends on the career. There are pros and cons to anything.
Well, you know, another thing we constantly preach, which, you know, I guess I should have been a preacher, but is one size doesn't fit all.
Exactly.
And I think to your point about major labels, they are in the business of making money, and a lot of it. And so they're not going to invest their money and their resources until they have a proof that, you know, proof of purchase, basically. Exactly. But with indie labels, we have hi, Adam. Thanks for being with us tonight. He's an indie rocker. And I think a lot of questions that young creators, and I mean young in terms of career, what attracts you when you're looking for talent to sign with an indie label? What are those sorts of parameters? Is it about streams? Is it about shows? Or what do you think the determining factors are in terms of someone's ability to get someone interested in them and be able to put Brooklyn Basement Records or, you know, Concord Music or whatever it is,
right.
you know.
I mean, first and foremost, the music has to make sense. I will never work with anybody, even if I love their music, that I don't think that I can add value. And so, you know, but pretend like we all know the music has to be good.
It can't suck.
You cannot suck. You know, make sure what you're putting in front of people is polished and good and like the best version it can be. The second thing that I personally look for is, has this artist cultivated some sort of following? You know, like, is it, even if it's small, you know, is there something that's kind of bubbling under the surface on Instagram or in their hometown, you know, just something that's like, you know, you can see that people are excited. Yes, that there's something happening, because, you know, I could like something as much as I want, but, you know, I do want to, there has to be a little bit of validation. And I also want to see that the artists have put in the work themselves and they've kind of taken themselves to a point to where they cannot go any farther. And
so how many, to interject, to give a parameter, how long do you think that sort of takes somebody to hone in on their writing, their performing, to get some gigs under their belt? It's not right away, right?
No, I mean, I would say, if I'm being
roughly,
honest, minimum
it's different.
3 years. You know, if you start writing and you know, start showing some songs to friends, maybe start a little songwriting circle so you can critique each other, start playing at your local bars, you know, it's probably a good 2 years before you really understand how things work. Because I think a lot of the biggest misconception is that a lot of artists think, I'm just good. I wrote this really good song, and so I'm just going to put it out there, and that'll be it. You know, I'll be famous. I'll have all these streams. It's just going to click. And, you know, there are those rare exceptions where that happens, but usually it doesn't. And so on my end, yeah, I love to see that an artist has put in the work. They understand what they want to be, you know, and it really just needs some lifting up, you know? And so that's what I look for.
So what, for those artists that have built up a little bit of a following, or they've done an EP, maybe, you know, they've got it sort of, the machinery is going around, right? Or it's working. It may not be ready to join NASCAR, but it's working.
It's on the road.
Yeah, it's on the road. Do most indie label owners, who are always, in my experience, very creative people? I mean, I think the nature of the beast is more.
Uh-oh.
We're back.
Hi, sorry.
Oh, I got kicked out. Sorry, guys. Now I'm plugged into my hot phone. Mother Nature.
Same.
So sorry. Okay, so what we were talking about before we were so rudely interrupted by Mother Nature, can't have more than 2 strong women on a stream, right?
Right.
Is about indie artists finding a home and what it takes to attract somebody of interest. How do you recommend an indie artist or songwriter go about finding a match? Where do you suggest they sort of start their research? Obviously, if you're an Americana artist, we hope that you know that you are in that genre and there's an Americana Music Association, et cetera, et cetera. But if you don't know that, but you want to know that, what is your best recommendation for someone to find that stuff out?
I mean, look around at artists that you like and appreciate and see what their path was. You know, there's information on the internet that, you know, can tell you all about a person's history and see where they started out or if they're still at that label. There are plenty of artists, you know, on Nashville labels that are started with them and are still with them. And so I would suggest that. And, you know, for me, I appreciate when artists reach out to me personally and say, you know, I'd love if you could take a listen to this. You know, there's not it's not all yeses, but, you know, there's definitely times that I'm like, oh yeah, this could definitely fit with what we do. And so I think, you know, you just got to be bold. And the thing is, though, I would say you have to have your stuff put together. Don't send an email that feels unprofessional, that is too, like, you don't want to be too formal, but you don't want to be too casual. You know, you have to
professional. Yeah,
you have to come at from a place of respect, and you're asking these people to invest in you, whether it's in time or money. And you know, you need to have the package put together to show them. You know, it's tough to just say, you know, I wrote a couple of songs here, listen to these demos, I have nothing else. So I would, you know, get as polished as you can and showcase that.
What, okay, I've got 2 questions about that. Let's talk about the music. What if somebody is really starting to get some traction? They don't have a lot of money, but they're doing well live or now live streaming, or some combination of the both. What do you think in terms of production should be the priority? Because not everybody can go in and, you know, they may not have a Pro Tools rig, or they don't have a friend that does, or, you know, musicians are constantly struggling to find bigger and better things to help their careers. So as an indie person who would be listening to somebody you don't really know, you might have gotten a referral. What is paramount to you in that sonic delivery of their music? Should it be, if you don't have a lot of money, do an acoustic, you and your guitar, you and your piano? Yeah. If you're a duo, same thing. If you're a band, maybe go a little farther. You know, don't go hire somebody for $5,000 and think you're making a record, because you're not. But, you know.
Yes. I mean, for me and the other label heads that I know, if you can come across, if you can get your song across in an acoustic way and it sounds crisp and beautiful, you know, invest in a good USB mic. You know, those are not that expensive. You can plug it into your computer. You can get good quality audio that way. That's all I need. You know, if somebody can get the point across that way, then they can get the point across anyway. You know, if you need a bunch of production elements and that's the only way to prove what you do, then that's kind of a tough sell. You know, if somebody's saying, oh, I wrote this song and, you know, here's a scratch demo, like it'll sound better when drums are happening and this and this and this. It's like, well, I can't visualize it the same way you are. So show it to me.
I don't have time, so thank you. Next.
So just send me the best version of what you can do, period. I would say, you know, iPhone demos are fine, but if you can get a USB microphone, because yeah, these days they aren't that expensive, And it just really changes the audio quality a lot.
Okay, so referring back to your earlier point, send me your package. I think most people are, especially people who have studied it in school and have a performing career, and they have a very clear idea of what they want to do, where they want to go. But there are a lot of other folks out there that are not so fortunate, and they don't really know. There are a lot of articles, there are a lot of different people out there. What are the absolute minimum must-have things that need to be in someone's package if you're, pitching yourself to an indie label?
You need to have at least one photo that is workable for showing who you are, and these days, again, you can do this with an iPhone and it can be beautiful. So that's not,
people are making movies on iPhone.
It's just crazy what you can do with your phones now. But you need one photo that kind of represents you. You have to have a website. There have been so many artists that don't even have a website. And it's, it doesn't have to be a custom domain or anything, but have a landing page that kind of says who you are, what you're doing, has a couple of, something up there, a little bio. I personally love to see a performance video.
So how long?
One song. I just need to kind of get a taste of how they can showcase their talent. Because it's also possible that somebody can write a great song, but they can't perform. And that's
right.
That's not ideal. And they just get stage fright, and that happens. But it's tough to invest before you know that. So, those few things, and always send links, never attach photos, never attach music, never do that. And don't send me a WeTransfer file that is
or Dropbox. Loaded. Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. Some of these WeTransfers that I get sometimes, I'm like, you just took up so much space on my computer. It's not working anymore. But yeah, get a Dropbox link or put it on a SoundCloud private link. There's lots of sites right now that you can do private listening links through, but do that. Don't attach.
Okay. So the big rage, as you know, right now is short form content, right? So do you want people sending you TikTok links? Do you want to see their Instagram reels, or is that putting the cart before the horse? Because if you don't know any better, one thing you read says you need to be everywhere. You need to be on these platforms and doing this here and doing that there. But that may not be what you need to be doing to showcase the fabric of your artistry.
Right. And I agree, because there are lots of platforms now. And some just don't work for some artists. Some artists are not going to be good at TikTok. Ron, who I manage, not good for TikTok. And so he's on it, but he doesn't participate really. It would be interesting to me to see a viral video of a song that somebody else made with your music, but I don't necessarily need to see you unless you have this crazy huge engagement there. I'd love to see links of Instagram and, if you have a Twitter, that just to kind of see how you interact and that you are active. One thing that is a bit of a red flag to me is when artists are not active at all on social media. It's because it's tough for the.
I think that's a no.
Yeah, and it truly is. And I give feedback about that all the time, because it's tough for fans to get on board. Even if they love your song, they want to, know who you are as a person, understand you, be able to interact with you, and feel like they're a part of a community. And especially this past year, it was so important, to feel like you're part of something without going to a show. And so, yeah, you really, whether you like it or not, you have to be engaged on social media in some capacity. Not every platform is right, but
you should find the one that works for you. Jeff is asking, does an artist have to be willing to perform live?
Like if I ask them to come perform, yes, I would. Yeah, I would say, again,
it kind of goes back to, I don't want to say imposter syndrome, but there are a lot of things you can do technologically to make yourself sound and look great, and editing. So, we all know those people that can't sing their way out of a paper bag, but
yeah. And I do, whenever artists that are from out of town send me information and links, I always ask it, not this year, obviously, but I always ask if they have a show coming up in Nashville that I can catch, because it really kind of is the best way to see how their talent translates to an audience, even if it's a small audience. You kind of want to see how they interact and if they can, really put on the show. And there are different ways of putting on a show, but yeah, you kind of have to be able to do it live.
Well, I would think correct me if I'm wrong, but especially if you're going after a partnership with an indie label, you need to know on the front end that they're not going to do every little thing. It's not like, go get me some sushi, right?
Right.
Which in the days of rock earlier, before, used to be added to people's recoupable bills. What is this?
Different days now.
Yeah, very much so. And let's touch on that for a second. What if somebody, an artist or a songwriter, is not really sure of where they fit musically, sonically, into a genre? Mm-hmm. How do you advise they refine that? Because I once met with a young friend of somebody, and they were like, oh, well, we're funk and we're this and that. I'm like, no, you're not. You're like Fish. You're like a jam band, Yeah. And you got to get that part right before you can say.
Yeah, getting outside perspective is really good and helpful, because you can be in your own head and say, no, I'm not this. I would never be that, or something like that. But the audience hears differently. And so I think that getting outside feedback is really good, to kind of hone in on what your sound is, and it at least a way to explain to people. But
can
also
you qualify outside opinions.
Outside opinions, I would say that if you're an artist, you should always have a trusted circle of other artists or creatives or people that you just really trust their opinions. Because obviously, you're going to have your aunts and uncles or somebody that's just like, oh, I love everything you do. It's perfect. And you sound exactly like, Whitney Houston, I don't know. And it's just not, it's not real, but
right.
They
should be a little, a little tougher skin.
Yes. Where they can give you critical feedback that you are receptive to. I think that that's incredibly important. But there's a lot of artists now that don't really fit squarely into one genre. And that's okay. That's really okay. You can, as I feel like, as long as you are serving the song, serving the album as best as you can, then you and you're, if you're building an audience, if you're, engaging with them, then they're going to be engaged. And that's the most important thing, not fitting squarely into one group.
It appears that all of the genres are splintering into micro niches.
Yes.
There's dance hall and trap and that in that genre, in the urban genre. And in Americana, you could be bluegrass, you could be Delta blues,
outlaw country.
Yeah, you could be, sort of Ed Sheeran-ish.
Or singer-songwriter. Yeah, you're right. You could be that.
So what are some other red flags and don'ts that people really need to be aware of before they sort of get their AAA map and start down the merry road to approach people?
Okay, so we went over not having a polished package, not being active on social media. I would say anybody that comes to me and says, can you get me on this playlist? Can you get me NPR and New Music Friday? And the answer is maybe, but nothing is guaranteed. However, if you are coming to me asking those things, it is a red flag to me that you don't understand the landscape of the music industry at all. And because you think that, all it takes is hiring somebody and then they could just go get it. And that's not true. And so that's a big red flag to me. So I would say, do your homework, know what you want and have goals. Absolutely. Bring goals to me. But if you are kind of zeroing in on all I need is a playlist, or all I need is for NPR to listen to me, and then my career will be made, then that's a red flag, because that's not how it works. And that's not even true. So even if I did get you that one playlist and that, one NPR slot, like, that could do nothing to your career. It has to be a full package. So understanding the landscape is very important to me.
And how they solve your problems of being a reputable label, right? And being known for the caliber of talent you represent and the artists, so
is on the line too. It's, if I'm putting my name next to your name, then I have to stand by it. And so that reflects on all the other artists that come after you. So it's important.
So one of the questions going to the commerce piece that was submitted by one of our interns, who is a singer-songwriter and fantastic. In fact, she's our songwriter, student songwriter in residence.
Nice.
And and we have a blog for her called Songs Are Me, and she has been interviewing other student singer-songwriters who are very talented, and it's really a great thing. And as you know, Nashville is so fortunate to have both MTSU and Belmont, with amazing talent and fabulous people over there. So shout out to all those creators. But Sarah wanted to know how, I think one of the big mysterious, like, behind the curtain things for most people who are approaching a DIY career is, what about the money? What does the pay look like? And how do indie labels pay songwriters or publishers or the artists? And how is that different from the way a major label, meets out their recoupable money or whatever? Because it is a little different.
It is, but I think that the starting point is that labels own your masters, and so that's separate from your publishing. So if they don't own your publishing, then they won't be paying out on your songwriter royalties. So you kind of have to figure out how you want to deal with that. If you need to get a publishing admin deal or a publishing deal, lots of options these days. But
and distribution.
Yes. And the money part is tough because it's slow and it's steady. It's very unlikely that you're going to be recouping money very fast, or even within the first year. That would be amazing if you do, but a lot of artists don't. And so, the labels really just they're just kind of keeping on investing until something happens. And a lot of times artists, and there's been this, thing for a long time that artists only make money on the road. And for a lot of artists, that's true because of the deals that they sign. And it's because they have a hard time getting out of the recoupable advance. Which is another reason why we wanted to start these artist things, so they don't feel like they're digging themselves out of a hole. And it's not that you're really digging yourself out. You're just not really ever going to see any money from streaming or record sales until you hit that recoupable amount. But if you make sure that your deal doesn't include touring, then you can make all the money on touring, money on merch. You need to have a good lawyer. You need
Jeremy to have a good lawyer.
Yes, talk to Jeremy Brook, because he can, or any lawyer, entertainment lawyer, should be able to look through the deal and see where, is advantageous for you to, step back and say, no, this is just mine. This shouldn't be a part of the deal. Because it's tough, and everything revenue wise is so splintered now. And it's a
Things are happening. Now that we've kind of moved to a hybrid system with live streaming and people are, offering ticketed shows, which is sort of like, to me, the online version of a house concert, right?
Yeah.
I think the balance is shifting a little bit back more to the middle, because you can take action to book shows now, whereas you had to rely on routing yourself through an area with clubs and whatever. But when you talk about the artist service piece, once again back to the money, how should someone think of that when they are trying to be professional and plan, for their career? How do you advise people to think about prioritizing different artist services, social media marketing, all of the different things that you offer? Because you offer a variety of services, right? You want to talk about that for a minute or two?
Yeah, sure. So we have in-house, we have a publicist who also works on brand deals when it's necessary. She doesn't really go out and pitch people for brand deals unless it makes sense, like very organic sense. And then we have somebody in-house that does branding and social media and just kind of anything that touches digital visuals, she can do. And then I handle all of our DSP partnerships. So that means that I work on marketing. So to make sure that everything is doing best practices, I pitch for playlists, I pitch for features, I pitch for playlist covers, kind of anything in that world, I handle and make sure that everything is put together and polished. And I also put together marketing ideas outside of, even if it's outside of the scope of what we do, I present them a marketing plan so that they can, either take them and run with it or say, no, thanks. And then I also put together our strategic overall release plan. And so that's really, I feel like that's a super valuable part, because it's somebody from the industry that's saying, you shouldn't be releasing this month or this month, you need to take a step back and that here's why. And this is, all the things that you need to do to get this release ready. And then we have a video marketing person who also does Americana and Nashville radio. So we do offer quite a lot of services, and we can do social media marketing, advertising if it's needed. So because of
marketing's the name of the game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's take the big people out of it. That's a whole nother universe. But really, to have impact and augment your own marketing, which, as we've already established, you need to be doing. What you can't, I know when everybody's career is different, everybody's needs are different, but what is sort of a baseline starting point for people to put in their brain to, so they're not like getting huge sticker shock, like, because you have to work up to it. And like everything else, you make sacrifices, there are trade-offs, but if you want to do this, you need to plan for hiring. Yeah. We'll pick one service to start and then we can add on it.
I think that the thing that usually makes the most sense for people is press first. And, to be honest, that can range anywhere from $1,500 a month to $5,000 a month, depending on the company you work with. One of our intentions is to kind of bring everything, more under one roof. So you're working with one team as opposed to a bunch of splintered off teams that aren't on the same page. So that's important. I think that if you understand the landscape really well, you need press, you need DSPs to start to catch on. I think that you need to look for somebody like what we're doing, or a more traditional label services group that can touch more sides to the project. There's also distributors right now are handling more label service aspects. It's just, I hate to always go back to this, but it does depend on your career, who you feel comfortable with. I feel like you can tell when somebody is just trying to, charge you money, and not you. It's just like there's a feeling that you get where you're like, I don't know if this is right, but I'm going to go for it anyways, just to try it, and it feels like a risk. And then there's the people that you think they really get it. They can kind of see, the same visuals. They present goals that you didn't even know you should have. There's a feeling, I feel like you should listen, and you need to listen to your gut. And you just can't hire anybody that doesn't feel like they understand your vision. It's tough, because I think a lot of people want to just say, oh, I can just hire this person and they'll just do it and it'll work. But it doesn't always. And sometimes that's because the person that they hired just doesn't get the vision.
So
quite an investment, I will say. Not necessarily what we do, but to hire press, radio is very expensive. I would never start with radio. And,
what
digital.
about some money to create a content plan to support a release or something like that?
Yeah, I think that there are people right now that do project management, and they work off of a retainer basis. We can even do that. And it's more just making sure they're basically the quarterback. They make sure that all the moving pieces happen at the right time. They build the plan, and they execute it, make sure all the team members are on the same page. That's a wonderful place to start. It's not as much of a, I think it's beneficial if you can also have press in that, or, some other team members. But if you can at least have somebody guiding your strategy, then it's better than, just winging it.
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the things that is hard sometimes for creators to understand is that just because you are moving into a business relationship, all of those people, it's their brain time too, and their ability to have time to marinate on what you are trying to be, what your message is, what you stand for, all of the things that create that magical connection with a listener or a fan, right? Mm-hmm. And that just doesn't happen like that.
No.
I heard today that the average attention span of a human is that of a goldfish.
I believe it, honestly. People are just scrolling. It's crazy.
But if you really want to stand out and make your magic pop and get in their ears, become an earworm, I think finding those fits in all of these ancillary services, that has to be a fit. Can they write about your music? Do they get it? Do they like it? I mean, we've all had gigs where we're like,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I feel like, like there's a gut feeling. I feel like you can tell when somebody's just trying to just bill you more, for lack of a better word. But yeah, it's a feeling, and there's nothing really that I can explain other than that. But yeah, you just have to feel like you can trust the person and that they will add value. Like if you don't feel like they're going to add value, why are you giving them their money?
Right. But I have a question that came up. Somebody sent it to me today, and we hear this a lot in a lot of the bigger things that you and I participate in, and it's the 1,000 true fan kind of rule. Like, you can earn a very good living if you have 1,000 fabulous, super fans, or people that will love you and will continue to buy your music or buy your merch. Or you have 100 fans that will spend $1,000 with you, which some people do, oddly enough, and nobody's ever heard of them. So do you believe in that? Do you think it's a good concept, or should you just sort of put one foot in front of the other?
I mean, it's absolutely true. There are artists in Nashville that no one outside of Nashville has heard of, but they live a great life. They get paid, well, and it's because they've cultivated an environment for their fans to live in. And there doesn't have to be very many of them, but they come to every show. They buy all the merch. If there's a Patreon, they sign up for the Patreon. They buy all the extra perks, VIP things. And, you know, those fans are so valuable to an artist's success. But also, on the other hand, there's a million ways to you know, measure success now. And the way, and it is up to you, you know, like maybe your version of success is playing an amphitheater, but maybe your version of success is just living a good life and being able to pay your mortgage. And that's all you need and all you want, and to be able to play music. I do think you kind of have to ask yourself, like, what is success to me, and what are the steps that I can take to get there? Because it does look different for a lot of people. Some people don't want the big fan base. It's just too much for them. Some people, that's the only way that they'll ever think of themselves as successful. And so, but there's a lot of different ways now. But I do think that, you know, that, I mean, this goes hand in hand with the 100 fans, 1,000 fans thing. If you can get that many people to pay attention to you all the time, then you're probably pretty set.
And you're probably going to have a lot of indie deal offers. But I just think as things are shifting, you know, you have new labels out there like Empire, which is it's not really a major label, and their contracts are much shorter. I just think the indie universe is so cool. And as you alluded to before, there are just so many different niches and different places that you can go hang your hat or go explore and don't have to commit to something. So before we get too close to the end here, I want to ask you, if you had a crystal ball, Blair, what would you see in it over the next, say, 5 years for the indie universe and indie artists, creators?
I mean, I think that indie deals are going to continue to get more and more artist friendly. Obviously, the labels have to make money because they have to survive. But I just think that artists are savvier these days, and there are so many free tools, cheap tools to use online to market yourself, that if you can do it, you don't necessarily need them. And so I think that more and more people will find people like us, you know, or, you know, just build their own teams and go up from there. That's kind of how I see it working. And that's what a lot of the bigger, you know, I brought up Beyonce and Taylor Swift before, but that's truly what they've done. Taylor, you know, got herself out of that deal, and
now she owns her masters.
Now she owns her masters and is in control of the ship. And I'm a big Taylor Swift fan. I mean, as of folklore, I became a big Taylor Swift fan. So I ordered her vinyl, and in there it says, you know, like, executive producer, Taylor Swift, graphic design, Taylor Swift, art direction, Taylor Swift. It's just, her name is all over it because it's just her vision. And I think that's what I feel like you want as an artist, is to be able to execute your vision with people around you that, you know, love and support you and see the vision too. And I think that's the goal, and that's the direction that it will go more and more of. So
do you see, you know, as you look at all these different micro niches and communities, do you see in your world with artist services and indie labels, do you see on that level, not just the creators, but more alliances being formed and sort of cross-pollination, like the major label artists are doing country people, or, you know, recording with a hip hop guy, or, you know, all sorts of global artists. I mean, Despacito is obviously, you know, that was the biggest song in the world. Yes. But several years ago. But do you see the indie universe doing things like that, the more creative control that people have?
Oh, absolutely. And it's already happening. And I think, you know, it's just, the more artists are in control, and this, like I said, the savvier they are these days, they notice too, they can pick out, oh, this, you know, this person seems to be getting some traction. I should, you know, reach out to them and see if they want to feature on a song. And, you know, if you both have, 100,000 followers on Spot or listeners on Spotify, maybe that's not a huge amount, but with your powers combined, maybe if you release a song together, you can both reach that next level. And so I think that that's being executed a lot these days, and it's an incredible strategy, and you should absolutely do it, because I always like to think of it as collaboration is much stronger than competition, and there's just no place for competition these days. You can be competitive with people, but
we don't need any more mean girls.
It's not going to get you anywhere. So you might as well be supportive. And just because somebody else has a place, doesn't mean that there's not a place for you. And so the great thing about this day and age in music is that there's a space for everybody.
Well, agreed. And the other thing, we have people that tune into us, into this series from South Africa, Nigeria, Bali. We've had people from England. People in the world are hungry for the information that Nashville has, that people like yourself and Brooklyn Basement Records and MusicRow411. So I see a lot more cross-pollination on a smaller indie level, just like the majors. And Afrobeat is back.
Yes. Yes. I'm actually working with a label in the Bay Area that is doing a bunch of that, and it's very cool. I'm excited.
Yeah. There are these Nigerian artists, women artists, that are blowing up big time. And I'm very excited about the future. I think there's tremendous opportunity. And I do think that the pandemic has made people reassess their priorities. Mm-hmm. And, I would like to think that we don't have to live in a Kardashian world anymore, but, I
think they'll always be here.
But what I mean is, I think people are so worn out with everything. Life has been so hard for a year for everybody, and people are overstressed that they want to just sort of melt into music again and feel good and find people who speak to their hearts and their struggles and their celebrations, So I'm very, very optimistic about the future. And we're so grateful to have you and Ron and Brooklyn Basement Records in our community, leading the charge and being beacons of hope for
having me. I love what you guys are doing. I think that the more artists educate themselves on, what's happening in the world, and like you said, starting at the beginning, just being polished, not making the little mistakes that a lot of artists make, you guys are doing a great thing.
Well, thank you so much. To all our folks out there who are with us tonight or joining us on the replay, make sure you sign up for our guide. It's in the chat there. On scrolling below the screen, because we have a special coming up, a surprise we're going to be offering people, which is something very helpful and necessary and very affordable. And we will sign up there and we will let you know more about that. Every week, I don't know, Blair, if you know this, but every week we do a thing called Freebie Fridays.
Oh, nice.
Which is a content piece. And it might be, a recap of what you said tonight. It might be an article from Hypebot or Billboard or new legislation you need to know about. So we try very hard to keep our community educated with the latest information, because that's what we preach, right? That you need to be on top of it. But most people don't know what's appropriate for them at their own level. They either think, oh, I got to be doing all the stuff the big people are, but you might not be there, to your earlier points. So we try to guide the way and expose them to people like yourself and Brooklyn Basement Records and all the fabulous people out there that are doing wonderful creative things with creators, for creators, and are creators themselves. So, we definitely will share. Do you want to tell people before we sign off, like where they can find out more about you and
Sure.
And what kind of services they might,
Yeah.
order? from you?
If you go to brooklynbasementrecords.com, there's all you need to know. There's a little about what we do section and a link to apply for a marketing partnership if that's what you think you need. Or you could just get in touch with us. There's a contact page where you can write it and it comes to the team. So yeah, I mean, I think it's exciting what you guys are doing, and I'd love to hear from anybody that is in the chat. If they want to send me demos or anything, I'm happy to listen.
Oh, that's great. Well, you guys can email us at, you can send it to assistant@musicrow411.com, and we will make sure that Blair gets what you want to submit to her. And also, we are going to be adding some of the Brooklyn Basement records to our radio station, MusicRow411, and our playlists. And I encourage each of you out there to check out the BBR playlist, because they have one too. And
yeah,
pretty fantastic artists. I think it's always fun to go into the candy stores of other places that you haven't been and pick out what you want to sample, you know.
I love that.
But we thank you so much for your time. We're coming up on the hour tonight. Everybody be sure and go visit brooklynbasementrecords.com. Check out Ron Pope and some of the other artists. They have fantastic music. These are examples of people who have embarked on the indie journey and are succeeding. So they're living, breathing examples of great music, great art, and living well as a result of it. So as always, Blair, we ask, will you come back for part 2? You've been so helpful tonight.
Of course. Yeah. I feel like we just scratched the surface. So we have.
Oh, absolutely. But people remember the goldfish rule.
I remember. Yes. Or I forgot. No, I'm just kidding.
So we thank everybody. We thank Blair for joining us tonight, and send us your questions so we can schedule a part 2 for Blair. I know a lot of you have them. And don't forget to sign up. Go to musicrow411.com. You can click at the top of the screen for our free Avoiding Mistakes guide. And that will also get you the announcement of the fun thing we're going to be offering just in the next couple of days, actually. So be sure and sign up and come back and see us. Check us out on our channels, MusicRow411. You can find us everywhere. And we're grateful for you, and we want you to stay inspired and creative. And thank you for being so much a part of MusicRow411. Have a great night, and watch out for the hail.
Bye, everybody.